Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show solo. It has no budget. We are entering our third season, and with that you could think things are about to pick up and have an ultimate conclusion, but perhaps they're going to fail. Thus is the case with the show we're going to be talking about today. Look, you know what? I want to save it. I just have so many thoughts about this show. I have to get it out, and I know it just ended, and I should have some collective time to think about what I want to say, but the truth is, I genuinely think Ted Lasso is one of the most interesting shows to come out in the past maybe 10 years, and there is so much to dive into when exploring it. That's really cool. But of course, before we jump into the world of everyone's favorite Zedeckis, we have a little bit of news to talk about. A couple of pieces I think are very fascinating. We're going to be diving into something we don't usually talk about as well, because I think it's worth mentioning for the future of entertainment. So we'll get into that. There's a little bit of WGA news we could talk about too. The Directors Guild of America, the DGA, apparently signed a deal that was like, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to manage. Well, leaving everybody else in the dust like SAG and the WGA, and it's like, well, that's really great, guys. Thanks for that. All I can say is the future of entertainment looks bleaker, and even more bleaker considering something else that was announced today. But let's talk about something semi-positive. I think it's very interesting that we're in this place where not only are Disney rebooting all of their classic franchises into live action adaptations, DreamWorks is wanting to do it too. So they're doing their first live action adaptation. We talked about it a couple months ago about How to Train Your Dragon, a big budgeted show. Makes sense. 2025 release, very cool, but now we actually have actors cast for the role. So we have cast Mason Thames in the role of Hiccup. Yes, he would be Hiccup. I think we'll talk about these movies closer to the release of this film, but Hiccup is the lead character. I know Jay Baruchel voiced them in the animated movie, so we cast Mason Thames. He was in The Black Phone, a really good movie, so that's really exciting. And then the Last of Us actress Nico Parker will be playing Astrid, and that's cool. I mean, young actors getting the chance to shine in something big like this. It is a children's property, so it makes sense that we're casting this way. This, if it's done right, could be the perfect bridge between Percy Jackson and Game of Thrones, where we're combining the two elements of those worlds that people like, the high concept fantasy and the young adult aesthetic. I hope this is good. I really do. I can only imagine how much time is going to be spent on perfecting what the live action Toothless is going to look like. I feel like that's going to be the huge thing that they're going to do. When you're doing the live action Lilo and Stitch, you have to make it look both contextualized in the modern setting while keeping true to the cartoon. Sonic was the same way. I feel like Toothless is in that same boat. So that's going to be really cool to see. I'm very excited to see what's going to come from this show. It's very interesting. I mean, this does interest me. I do think there is the possibility that DreamWorks will be branching off and trying this with other properties. Now, I don't remember what other movies they have that could potentially be done this way. Because I know it's Shrek, obviously they're going to want to try. So Kung Fu Panda, probably not. Megamind, I could see Megamind being one of them. I could see that. The Road to El Dorado, oh, that would be sick. If you wanted to fill the void of what's going to happen once Dial of Destiny is done, I could see Road to El Dorado being that kind of a franchise. Monsters vs. Aliens would be a really cool idea if they attempted that the right way. I would love that a lot. Though I guess the most realistic ones, in my opinion, would be them trying Shrek, The Prince of Egypt, if they want to do something big, and Monsters vs. Aliens. The thing with those, though, is they're not franchisey. They're kind of the standalone ones. Mr. Peabody and Sherman would be interesting, but I doubt that anybody wants to touch that franchise. Either way, I think that's really cool stuff. I think this is going to lead to some interesting developments from DreamWorks. They have been doing really good with their animation lately. I really do think Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is one of the best looking movies to come out in the past few years. Really impressive. And speaking of really good animation, let's jump over to our next topic because Across the Spider-Verse just dropped. I'm not going to be doing a review for it. Needless to say, it is a really good film. There are parts of it that I didn't really like. Certain character moments and traits where I'm like, okay, this feels like we are pushing a narrative on here. But the more I thought about the movie, the more I'm like, actually, I like what they're doing here. I think that's a really cool idea. It looks great. We'll never have a movie look this good again. We'll never have an animated property from a superhero comic book look and feel this authentic and realistic to a comic book. So when I started off just being like, it's not my cup of tea, the more I thought about it, the more I have enjoyed it. There was the big event where we're just like, hey, here's the premiere, let's go. Couple of producers over at Sony are talking about the future of Spider-Man stuff. They're still holding on, clinging to those rights. And the thing I'll say about that is you can be mad all you want that Sony has the rights, but there is no way in hell that if Marvel and Disney had the rights to Spider-Man, that we would have gotten Across the Spider-Verse. It just would never have happened. So it's cool that that did, and it makes sense. But Avi Arad was just kind of like, yeah, we're working on a Spider-Woman spinoff. And I'm like, of course you are. Of course you are. Gwen Stacy's a really good character that you utilized well in a way that nobody was expecting. And she's possibly trans now, which is an awesome addition to that character's mythology, so that's great. That's a really smart idea, and I could definitely see that working. Let's hope it sticks the landing. I hope they actually do that. I'm 100% convinced that after the success of Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider-Verse next year, they're going to be pumping these out. It's a good idea. You know, you have characters people like in an animation style people love. Do every spin-off. Do every spin-off. You could imagine. I would lose my mind if we did like a 90-minute movie about Hobie Brown's Spider-Punk universe, because that was just so flashy and intense, and I want to see that forever. But we're doing Spider-Woman. That's great. Live-action Miles Morales too, potentially. I'm like, yeah, probably. I guess if we do Spider-Man 4, it's the perfect time to introduce Miles. It probably wouldn't be Shameik Moore playing the character. We'd get somebody younger, though we don't know who that would be. But that's still great. Like, I think that's a great idea. Something that's definitely going to happen no matter what. It's happening now. I do think this is like the reinvigoration that the Spider-Man franchise has needed. And it's still insane that the comic books can't do anything about it. It's so bizarre to me. I just love the notion of, like, you walk out of, like, Across the Spider-Verse, and it's, like, this big sweeping movie. It's, like, so cool. You're like, I'm going to go pick up a Spider-Man comic, and you pick up, like, Dark Web, or you pick up The Death of Miss Marvel, and you're like, what's going on right now? That's hilarious. I love that idea. It sounds so stupid and silly. But it's really fun. Cool stuff all around. Speaking of cool stuff, I guess this is cool, I don't know. Andy Muschietti, who is working on the Flash movie, a movie I've said before, I'm not going to go see it with my own money. There's the possibility I could be seeing it for something else. And I'm like, well, if I get to see it, do I want to talk about it? Because I don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of problems with that Flash movie just going into it that I don't want to talk about, but Andy Muschietti has an impossible hill ahead of him to sell this movie and stay true to, like, this is something special. He had comments recently where it's like, Ezra Miller was born to play this role, like nobody else could do it. Not true, but okay, man, you do you. Well, the current rumor is, and it is a rumor, it's not confirmed, I guess if we were going to confirm it, Comic-Con could be the place to do it. I don't know. The rumor is that Andy Muschietti is attached to direct the Batman Brave and the Bold movie, which I guess makes sense considering he is directing a Batman movie right now with The Flash. So I do get that. I think there are worse choices. I don't know enough about, like, his body of work to really say that. Is he one of those guys that came from the, horror background? I know he did the It movies, and those are incredibly well done. He did Mama. Oh, Mama's a good movie. You know what? That is not a bad body of work I'm seeing here from him. The It movies are incredibly well made. Mama's a well made film. The Flash has its own baggage, but that doesn't really matter. He's doing something next year called The Electric State. What is that? Is that a new movie or something? Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Kiyu Kwan, Michelle Yeoh, Anthony Mackie, Stanley Tucci. Nope, this is directed by the Russos. Oh, why is he attached to it then? The Electric State is an upcoming American science fiction film directed by the Russos, written by Marcus and McFeely. It's based on the narrative art book, the same name by Simon Stalenhag. Why is Andy Muschietti attached to that? That's weird. Whatever, but Brave and the Bold, sure, do it, man. You're already doing like a Batman movie now. I'm so curious about that Brave and the Bold movie because it's like, how young are we going to go? Are we casting somebody new? We really should. The last thing I want, and I mean this literally, the last thing I want is it to be Michael Keaton. That might actually ruin my life. I'd really hate that. It's going to be interesting because if it's going to be connected to Superman Legacy, how young are we going to make this guy and how old is Damian going to be? I guess we could. You know what? I've been going back and forth for like how old we want Batman to be. If we say Superman is 30 and we say Batman is 30, so he could have met. So if he was 18 when he was with Talia, we could say Damian's 12. Or if we met him when he was 20, we could say Damian is 10. It works, but it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. And then with that, like, how old is Dick Grayson? That's a whole other topic we'll get into later, but he's probably directing The Brave and the Bold. I think we're going to start seeing these announcements. The only part that upsets me so far is a lot of dudes. Gunn, Mangold, Muschietti. He is, of course, an Argentina filmmaker. So that's some diversity, but you have yet to say anything about your cast of characters being anything but white people and men. So we'll see. We'll see. I guess we'll see. And I thought that would be the end point there, but I actually wanted to talk about another piece of news that kind of like dropped today. I think it's worth talking about because it's like the future of entertainment, the future of like whatever the fuck, it's just like it's the future. Apple has announced its Vision Pro VR headset. So the best way I can describe it to you is imagine if you were wearing a big set of ski goggles that had the iPhone set out for you. And it tracks your retinas and you can use your fingers in real time to like touch things. Doesn't that sound epic? Okay. It is an idea that we were going this way no matter what. I don't know who was going to get here first, but the VR future of Ready Player One was always going to be something people are interested in. And I get it, but the more immersive things get, the less interesting it feels to actually have stuff immersive. I don't know. There's just such a big distance to it. And the price tag at like 3,400 USD. So that's roughly about like 5,000 Canadian where I am. That just does not sound appealing. For the things my phone could do, I don't know. And Disney is attached to it too. They're like, hey, you can watch like The Mandalorian on it and you could be like submersed in the thing. I hate that. That sounds terrible. Like, why are we doing this? Why is this the future? I think it looks stupid. I don't know. It's very bizarre. And it definitely has like the direction of this is where they want us to go, where it's more immersive and everything. And it's scary and it sucks. And I don't know. It's either going to be a huge success and we're going to see the ripple effects like change the actual trajectory of what entertainment and cinema is, or it's going to bomb and nothing good is going to come from it. Either way, it's exciting, right? It's kind of exciting. I don't know. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. So, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's jump on a plane, cross the pond, and head over to Ted Lasso. So, Ted Lasso is over, folks. It feels like it's the actual finale of the show. They said, yeah, we had a 3-season arc that we were going to hit. We hit it. We have no other stories to say. maybe a spin-off here or there, maybe something else. Who knows? Who knows? But the truth is, Ted Lasso's over. We had 3 seasons of the show. And I just wanted to talk about it a bit because I think this is a really interesting piece of fiction worth exploring because it shows you, I think, how success can hurt your creativity sometimes. I mean, I don't want to. I don't know what to do. Like, okay, the 3rd season's really bad, and I'm sorry if you like it, and me saying that is like negative or upsets you. But the 3rd season is so bizarrely weird and just creatively bankrupt and lazy and uninspired and effortless that I'm sure it's going to please people in a way that they're going to be excited about. But it's also like, why were these the choices you made? You could have done a number of other things that actually worked this way. And to me, the reason season 3 feels so out of place and unfocused and uninspired is because we had 2 really good seasons. Like, it's a tale as old as time. Me talking about it doesn't matter because it happens to every good show. Eventually, you have this television program that comes out of nowhere. It's a runaway success. And the 1st season is just electric. It's game-changing. It's inventive. It is just making you talk about things and think about things that you don't see anywhere else. And that becomes this breakout success, especially in a world where streaming services are so prominent. That's another thing about Ted Lasso. It is both an example of the success of streaming shows and the detriment of streaming shows. This could only exist on a network that is an app. Like, if we were to do this concept, the exact same show, weekly on a cable network, it doesn't have the same vibe. It doesn't play off the same. You need this type of ambiance for it to work. And it's just weird that way. So it is one of those streaming shows that just hit at the perfect time in the culture. Ted Lasso, the 1st season, premiered right when the pandemic started to get brutal, when it started to just become this all-encompassing identity, and suddenly we were forced to be inside and we couldn't do anything else, and we had to just find some comfort in the world. And I really do think a lot of the success of the 1st season is just the bleakness of where we were as an audience. You know, you just were like, anything could happen at any moment. I don't feel safe anywhere. And I might be over exaggerating like how you personally feel about like the pandemic, but as like a collective, there was this feeling of like, there is something wrong that we can never get back. And I don't know how to experience or feel about that idea. Right? That was where we were as a society. And then the show comes out on a network that's still emerging and creating content. It's with an actor and name people like of Jason Sudeikis, and it's about sports, which is really nice, and people like the British comedy feel. So that's really nice. And suddenly this sleeper hit based on like a NBC sketch character suddenly becomes like this network's top grossing thing and is a breakout hit. And that's the thing, like it instantly hit and found its audience and connected. It was a slow build. It dropped and people were like, well, this is kind of fun. And then people were like, yeah, it is kind of fun. And then, yeah, this is fun. This is great. And then you could just watch it all. And you could binge the 1st season and you could experience it in these bigger ways. And it became like this new type of television show where everybody was nice to each other. The platonic friendships were what were important. And it wasn't about this like dark comedy. Look at how satirical and brooding we are in terms of our material. It was just references that are funny with characters who are funny. It didn't take itself seriously, and we were having fun with it. An American football coach comes over to England to coach British football. That's funny. There's something in that that's fun. And Sudeikis is doing a goofy Texan adjacent voice, and we're having, I guess he's from Kansas. It's a funny voice, and look at him. He's a fish out of water across the pond. And it worked, and it held its audience together because it was fun, because it was entertaining, and because it knew what it was doing. The confidence of the first 2 seasons are astounding and so great because it just like it quietly just said, we're going to kind of touch about these issues and, have things to say, but we're largely about the comedy and the character relationships and developments, and we're about making this club feel like it's a family, feel like everybody belongs here. That is a really powerful message. It's very important. It talks about mental health in sports, and that's really cool. Now, you can look at the first 2 seasons, and I do. I think one of the most public displays of like a couple having arguments or finding faults in each other has been the Olivia Wilde and Jason Sudeikis divorce or separation. Both of them were actively making content when their relationship kind of fell apart to what it was in the big ways. And I personally think if you watch Don't Worry, Darling, it is Olivia Wilde talking to her children like, don't worry, I am here for you. And if you watch Ted Lasso, the first season in particular, it definitely feels like mom doesn't want dad around. And that kind of is on the nose a little bit if you look at it. And again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it's definitely just, okay, there we go. There's what they're saying, and I get that. And season 2 of Ted Lasso was the same way. It felt a lot like Sudeikis trying to explore the nature of like why somebody wouldn't love him. That could be an overconfidence thing. I don't know. I don't want this to delve into like over-analyzing Sudeikis as a person and just talking about like his faults as a character or what he thinks about certain stuff, but he is the producer of the show. I think he's part of the show running like pact. He does do some of the show running. He's obviously a writer, and I think one of the things that he has been good for the first couple of seasons at doing was allowing Ted to be vulnerable and feel like a character who needs help but doesn't seek it out. There is an arrogance to that where it's like, well, maybe he wants to make himself look better by making his character look worse. And that is very surface level, but I mean, a lot of these comedy guys do have that energy. I'm not saying anything about Sudeikis in that capacity. I think it is just something you could read into about his character and what he's trying to set up with Ted Lasso. I think that's something you could look into, and it's potentially an option to explore. But if you look at like the content that both of them have made, Wilde and Sudeikis, it is clearly them working through something in the form of their art. And I think Don't Worry, Darling is a really good movie until it's not, but that's its own problem. I do like that movie more than other people, and I do think it's interesting how they handle like the separation, maybe dating other people. It's very, very interesting. Kind of cool. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. It's very compelling behind the scenes for some of the things you like, because when you get a clear picture of like what's being put in front of you, it just makes it a little more fascinating in my opinion. I understand like how a general audience member isn't like, well, whoa, what does this have to say about Sudeikis' relationship to Olivia Wilde, and what does this character have to relate to Harry Styles? Like I don't think everyone cares about that, but I do, and I think it's very fascinating. And it's very apparent. It's very apparent that a show where Ted Lasso is going through a divorce and he leaves his family and his son is about Sudeikis doing the same thing. It's very apparent. And that's okay. I get that completely. And then you would add like the soccer element and the side character element, and you get something special. And the thing I want to make abundantly clear to everyone, I'm not a Ted Lasso hater. I do not for the life of me think this show is bad in any capacity. The first 2 seasons, at least, I love it. I think the exact tone it is going for was so strong and impactful and really moved me. I was happy to see these characters grow. I think the jokes landed for the most part. There were standouts that really found their audience. Like, I think one of the best things Ted Lasso did was show you like there are these actors who are capable of doing more if you give them the chance. Hannah Waddingham, Brett Goldstein, Juno Temple, like these named characters, these named actors people know, if we just give them a little bit more, they can shine a bit. I think that's really cool. And the fact that the show is able to do that in a half hour was really incredible. And it became the runaway success. We're talking multiple nominations, multiple wins. They met the president. Like the cast went to the White House to talk about mental health in sports. That's weird. I still think that's weird because, like, What do they know? I don't know. It's very bizarre, that stuff, but it is one of the defining shows of the 2020s, of the pandemic era, and of streaming. And I think later on I do want to make a video talking about like what I think the defining shows of streaming are. Ted Lasso represents the modern era of streaming shows where we're looking for actors and names we can recognize talking about something that is fun and lighthearted, where we don't have to think too much about it. We don't have to delve too deep into it. And that's what this show was. It just nailed that completely. And we may never see the likes of it again. There's going to be imitators trying to catch up to what this did. But the problem is the sincerity isn't going to be there. And maybe it wasn't there to begin with. And that's a bold statement. I'm not saying anything about it. Maybe the things that made this show successful in the first 2 seasons were flukes, and the thing that actually was bad was blocked by what made it good. Does that make sense? Like, maybe we lost the thing that made it good in the 3rd season, so it fell apart completely. Look, the first season, runaway success, garnered multiple nominations. I think both Sudeikis and Waddingham and Goldstein won Emmys and Globes for it. All earned, of course. Season 2, same thing, very popular. People are starting to love it more. It was just like the feel-good show that talked about these deeper issues, that let its characters act and have fun and do these things. And then it was the biggest show on streaming for a minute. I don't know what that means. Apple doesn't really like talk about their numbers too much. Not that they need to reveal them. They're like $1 trillion company. But it's like, this was a show that at least garnered a lot of attention online, had people talking about it, and was worthy of being a bigger season. Because it's a bigger season, we don't try as hard. Now, again, I just want to say this. I do really love the first 2 seasons. I think they are near perfect comedic storytelling. They are very strong. They work so well on every single level. The final season of this show is one of the most baffling, bizarre twists and turns for a comedy series I have ever seen. I do not understand how we went from the first 2 seasons to what the final season became. It is utterly bizarre. It honestly feels like it became a parody of itself, where this was the thing it thinks it needs to be, but actually isn't. That's not to say there isn't good jokes in there. That's not to say that some of the stuff isn't funny and holds up. But overall, this season is so weird. And it's the bad kind of weird, where it feels like we don't have to take any chances anymore because we are the biggest show on Apple. We're one of the biggest shows on streaming, which it happens all the time. We suddenly, because entertainment has like this cursed half-life that is only growing smaller and smaller and smaller as we get more content available on every single platform ever made, the half-life of this stuff gets smaller and smaller too. So when you see like a normal show, like if we look at The Office, right? The Office could be a good example. It took them 7 seasons to reach their limit of what good storytelling could be until it became a parody of itself. Now, a decade later, that is smaller, so a 3rd season, the 3rd year of a show, becomes a parody of itself now. Because we can't let anything grow and find its audience that high anymore. Because of that, this season has every single episode over an hour. There is no reason whatsoever your comedy show that is a sitcom, it's a situational comedy. It's a situational comedy in a football club. There's no reason it needs to be over an hour. We're not a dramedy. We were a straight up comedy. That's what we were. There's no reason this needs to be over an hour. It's crazy. It doesn't work. And it makes the entire flow of the show just hit differently. Scenes are extended for no apparent reason. We dwell on characters longer than we need to. We do not edit scenes down more than we need to. Now we have a joke, and instead of letting it resonate, we just see a character think about the joke. And it's like, what are we doing? We can't laugh it off anymore because now we're just letting this have its quiet moment. It feels like we know we're a comedy. So if we have the joke, ha ha ha, we have the minute in the episode to let the joke wash over you. It's like so incredibly weird. even saying that if you were to cut all of these episodes to a solid 40, 45, that's a tighter flow that could work. And you could get a cleaner, crisper season that doesn't feel like we're losing ourselves to it, that doesn't feel like we're missing the mark on stuff. It's very bizarre what they're doing here. And I think what's even more bizarre is that we're not a comedy anymore. We have made this show work being a comedy. But now we're delving into a drama. Specific episodes of this season are dedicated to very specific dramatic sequences. I'm not going to say every single one in particular, but it's like, what if we delved into a character's sexuality for the entire hour of a show and we just hold on that as the dramatic driving point that every character has to comment on it? Or maybe somebody's personal photos or videos get leaked and we have to spend time for every single character to comment on that. It's like, this isn't the tone the show has set up 2 seasons ago. We talk about this stuff, sure, but we don't have it go into the dramatic music. We have to spend 20 minutes addressing it so people know what side we're on. It's just every single character now has either become so self-serious and self-involved that they are no longer allowed to tell jokes unless the script forces them to tell a joke, or they're a parody of what their character used to be. It's so insane. So you are either like, here is the dark, twisted nature of this character. Well, dark twisted's a little bit dramatic. Here's like, we're going to have Keeley deal with this theme for the entire arc. We're going to have Nate deal with this theme for the entire arc. They're not allowed to be funny anymore. They are just these serious characters. Or, on the complete other end of that spectrum, we have characters who have no actual personality and are just parodies of what their characters were. Higgins, for example, is just here to make very badly timed jokes and have no development with his wife, with his kids. They are not even like thought about for a majority of the season. He is just here to say a quippy line after he says something important and do nothing else. So his character does nothing. Danny Rojas is the worst example, where we have let every other character kind of grow in that circle. Colin has grown. Isaac has grown. We've seen Sam has grown and Jamie have grown. But Danny is just crazy nature character who doesn't need to do anything else. It's very weird. It doesn't work. And why did we do the plot with Zava? Like, we could have cut that out and nothing would have changed. It did nothing. It felt like we extended this joke further than we needed to, and it didn't end up being funny. He just left abruptly in the season. It's very bizarre. And sure, this show like stretches the magical and whimsy and like what real world politics are and what we can do that makes it look real and stuff, but some characters go on some insane arcs in this show. Nate's arc is so bizarre, and it feels like we were trying to give him redemption, but it just became he lost something else, so now he's a wimp again. It's very strange. I think there are a few characters who actually have a good ending to their story. I think you could say that Jamie won in the end. Like, he had an arc that was completed for some godforsaken reason. They have this idea presented for Roy that he wants to change himself. He never says it until somebody says it to him. So we do not think for a minute he is actively looking to change himself until he just says it randomly. And that's really lame. And that means nothing. And again, it's just like we really are stretching what these characters can be. They are caricatures of themselves. They are parodies of themselves. This show is the hollow corpse of what it used to be. It's no longer like this funny, lighthearted, quirky comedy where everybody's delivering these A-plus performances. Zedeckis is sleepwalking. He is sleepwalking. And here's what I kind of think the deal is with Zedeckis in this show. He wanted to take the attention off of him because of like his public outbursts that have people saying like he jumped on the car to stop Wild from seeing Styles. Like, I think he was desperate to get the light off of him, let his co-stars shine, so people forget the fact that he was or is dating a younger woman he met while filming this show. That's personally what I think. And you feel that. You feel like he is just resenting the fact that he still has to try to do this thing. Because the usual charm isn't there. The usual flow isn't there. He's not as invested as he used to be. And this was the thing that essentially made him successful in the current era. Saying Sudeikis is successful in the current era, the dude's been successful for a long time, but this is the one that's going to define him. And just to go out on a whimper and literally have the character say in like his final act, like, it's not about me. Well, your name's the title of the show, so it is about you. And you are hardly in any of the show. There are full 40-minute segments that don't have Sudeikis. What are we doing? What is this? It's your show. Ted Lasso's the name. Why aren't you in this? I don't understand that. I don't know why he's afraid of that. It's so weird, and it doesn't work. And the characters hardly spend any time together. It definitely feels like we couldn't have everybody filming on the same day half the time. So we have side stories for, Rebecca over here, and Keeley has one over there, and you're just doing all this. Juno Temple has the most to do out of anybody, which is very bizarre because she was the supporting character and the supporting character. And now she is given like the main thrust of the relationship drama, and it's very strange and it's weird. I don't know. It's such a like this weird thing that happened to the show where it was suddenly the most important, impactful thing to ever exist on streaming and on Apple. And because of that, it felt like it wanted to switch its narrative and become like, we can talk about these deeper, more meaningful issues and dwell with our characters longer and then still lead to the same ending we had planned this whole time. You can't have it both ways. This show definitely feels like it had its ending planned out before it actually got to what that was. It's the How I Met Your Mother thing. The How I Met Your Mother thing where it's like, well, we filmed this end sequence in season 2 if we need to end the show there, and that was Victoria being the mother. So we have to fit that narrative into the ending. It's the same thing here. Ted had to go back home. Everybody had to find their happy ending. But did they really find their happy ending? How many people really got closure? It definitely feels like we're ending the show, so we ended it. I don't know. It's a very strange thing to happen. And look, oh my goodness, like that last montage where we're playing, was it Father and Son? I can't remember. We're playing one of those old songs, but there were some really bad looking effects in there, and it's very rough, and I don't know, there's something about this that just didn't work, and everybody just is together in the end, so it's like, we're just done now. It's over. Ted's gone. We don't have to think or try or pretend that this mattered. And it's very rough because of that. It definitely has the vibes of we just don't need to do it. We just did it. There you go. That's what we were supposed to do. So we got there. Sudeikis can go be happy somewhere else now. All these actors can find other shows to work on, other properties to work on. Waddingham's going to do Mission Impossible. Goldstein's got Hercules if they ever do something with that. We're done. And I'm like, that's it? You were saying this is one of the most impactful and important shows on streaming that talks about mental health and comedy in these beautiful ways and the need to go to therapy and have these instructional things about relationships and marriage and all that stuff. And just for you to go, no, we're just, we don't want to talk about that kind of stuff anymore. We're just like a very big show with obviously more money to put in like the actual soccer thing, and we whip through the season so fast. Like, we do a lot of time jumps, which doesn't help the flow of the show. It's not strong. It's not a strong finale. Now, I say all of this, and as somebody who analyzes and critiques film and television and literature for a living, I look at these things more than other people do. So I can see how me talking about like the faults of the show aren't going to be what the general audience is thinking. But I could definitely see how, even if you like don't focus on this stuff a lot, you cannot tell me and sit there. You just can't sit there and say, this is the same thing. It's not the same thing. The flow is different, the narrative is different, the stories we are weaving are different, the characters don't interact together, the drama overtakes the comedy, and it just kind of ends on a weird note where nobody has anything else to say. It's very strange and definitely has that lazy finale feeling. Like we backed ourselves in air quotes into this corner. Changing it now would go against the nature of the show. No, it wouldn't. This is lame. It doesn't have any cultural staying power. That finale has no staying power. I think about it and I'm like, yeah, that's what you had to do because you want to end the show. It's called Ted Lasso. If he's not there, what are you doing? So he's gone. And then nothing else happens. Keely doesn't get with Roy or Jamie. Everyone stays on the team to continue playing for Richmond? Yeah. Rebecca's still in charge. Beard stays, he gets married, nothing changes, nothing grows. Everybody is essentially left in the same place where the show started. The only difference is Ted's getting on the plane back home instead of coming towards Richmond. What an absolute waste. We did nothing. We said nothing. We tried nothing. We played it so safe that it felt hollow and empty and had nothing interesting or creative to even attempt to say. Bizarre, awkward, lazy, and the first two seasons are still brilliant storytelling. Sudeikis was trying so hard, and Waddingham gave such great performances, and I think she might be the standout of this season, just because Rebecca gets a little more fun stuff to do outside of places, but with more money and more time, you'd think we'd maybe have more fun. But we don't. We fizzle out so poorly. And that is such a shame. But the thing is, we are in the time of streaming. And with streaming content coming every 10 seconds, we're on to the next thing before we have time to sit with this thing. So while I think there is more staying power for a Ted Lasso than other shows of this particular genre, we're going to lose it quick. And this time, 2 years from now, are any of us going to be thinking about Ted Lasso or consider Ted Lasso, or are we just going to have another runaway success for those 3 years and something's going to fill the void? I wish I could say this mattered more, but I want you to consider every single piece of streaming content that exists, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or Disney or Apple or Paramount or any of it. And tell me what you think has the best series finale. Do you remember any of them? Is there any real staying power in any of them? Or are all these things just of the moment that they don't matter the moment they end? That's what Ted Lasso feels like to me. We're not talking about it anymore. It didn't have the good resignation like Succession did or Miss Maisel did. A lot of important shows are ending right now. And Ted Lasso, I will say, just whimpered out on such a lazy, uninspired note, where it definitely felt like the creatives thought they had more influence than they did. Sudeikis was like, don't worry, it's not about me anymore. But it is. You're the reason they watched. Be the reason they stay. I cannot believe what happened to this show so quickly, because they filmed the second and third season so close together. How did this happen? How did we get so many more errors in this season than the last one? Utterly unbelievable. I don't understand how this happens. I really, truly don't. Insanity. It's so crazy to me that this is what happens, but I guess that's what happens when you don't want to talk about yourself anymore. I get it. As a creative, I understand you put your heart and soul into one thing. There comes a point when you can only talk about that one issue for so long. You know? You don't want to talk about your divorce anymore? Fine. You don't have to. But you just destroyed what was a successful narrative for your third season. And now it's gone, and we will never think about it again. And I don't know, it's maybe the last time on a big scale like this I ever talk about this show. So that's something. So yeah, Ted Lasso Season 3, I'm going to give a 5 out of 10. And the final season, or just Ted Lasso in a whole, I'm going to give a 6 out of 10. So thank you all for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating over there. It definitely helps out. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.